All right. Well, welcome everyone to our first event in 2022 and the start of our 2022 spring seminar series. In today's session, we'll discuss the educational research course and learn from the experiences of some of the recent graduates. We've created an FAQ sheet and we'll put that in the chat. Quincy's going to help me put that in the chat. And we also are going to welcome you to submit any and all questions through the chat that we can address to the panelists. Please remember that the applications for the educational research course are open for several more days. Those will be closing on the 16th. So we'll accept applications through the 16th. And we're going to put that link for you in the chat now as well. So this is, as I said, the first event of our 2022 spring series. And we're really thinking about, oops, I'm sorry, there's a typo there. This is 2022. And we are really excited to start by talking about demystifying the educational research course. In the next couple of months, we're going to launch our podcast, the Talk, Listen, Collaborate, or TLC podcast. And we'll be starting with a mini series to accompany this seminar session or the seminar series, focusing on a day in the life of an ATSU researcher. So we're really excited about that. We'll be having some really dynamic and engaging conversations with researchers from across the ATSU community. And then save the date for April 12th. We'll be getting together in GatherTown. A bit of an alliteration there, but a really exciting platform to network together and grow our educational research community. So we're really excited about that. All right. And before we get started with the panel discussion today, I want to turn it over to Dr. Quincy Conley for a brief discussion, brief description about the course. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Thanks for facilitating today's conversation. This is awesome. Really excited about all these wonderful faces, you all taking time out of your day to join us today. Real brief, without stealing too much away from our gracious panelists who have agreed to be here, who have taken the course. I just want to describe the TLC Intro to Educational Research course for those of you who may not know too much about it just yet. It's an awesome 10-week course that's designed to introduce participants to the basic steps for designing an educational research study. And this focuses specifically on educational research. Obvious reasons, we are all educators at an institution focusing on serving our students as well as our patients in the community. But by the end of this 10-week course, not only will you have developed a research proposal that you can immediately execute, that's the idea, you will also benefit from being able to better discuss and critically evaluate educational research publications that will help you as you continue to hone your teaching skills. How the course is structured is that participants meet via Zoom once per week for about 1.5 hours on Mondays to discuss the various steps of designing a research study, your very own. Myself and some mentors from the ATSU community, some of you are here, thank you in advance, will help give feedback and direction and guidance on just how to hone your research projects to turn into that proposal. In between weekly meetings, participants are expected to complete approximately 4 to 6 hours of instructional activities, homework, that will help you be able to accomplish that goal at the end of the 10 weeks so that you could turn this right around and make it your own, execute this, and become the heroes that you are. Best part of this course for everyone that's here, it's completely free. That's a very, very brief overview of the course. However, the panelists, I'm sure, will shed more light on this. Thank you again, Julie. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to turn it over to the panelists. So I'd really like to turn it over to them. We're delighted, like I said, to have several folks with us who've taken and graduated from the course. So can you each please introduce yourself briefly, share your name, your pronouns, your position title, and your school or department? Brittany, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you for that. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Williams. I'm an instructional designer and the assistant director of the University-wide Teaching and Learning Center within academic affairs. And I've been at AT Still for 5 years now, and she and her would be my preferred pronouns.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Preeti. I work as an adjunct faculty for ATSU's Public Health Department. And I did my master's from Master of Public Health from ATSU itself. And I'm currently pursuing my Doctor of Education in Health Professions from ATSU itself. And my pronoun is she and her. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mitzi Wasden. I'm a pediatric dentist, assistant professor here at ASDO, and I've been here for a year, just about a year and a half now. And I guess it would be she and her. Thanks.
My turn, possibly. Okay, hi, I'm Kimberly Skinner. I am assistant professor of audiology, Arizona School of Health Sciences. And I've been here, I guess, coming up on 3 years, and pronouns are she and her as well.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. Let's get started by thinking about the very beginning of your experience with the educational research course. What motivated you to apply?
I can start there. I was new as a faculty member. I'd been in private practice for 20 years and always been my dream of teaching. And so I was super excited to be here, but I didn't know anything about methods and I'd wanted to be involved in research. So I thought this would be a really great place to start. I didn't know what I was in for, but I was over my head in some ways, but you guys were an amazing help. So I'm super glad I took it.
I piggyback off of that. Working with the Teaching and Learning Center, I was fortunate to work directly with educators. Most of them would experiment with new teaching approaches, and I would refer to articles and I would say, hey, why don't we try this? But if they wanted to dive really deep into, let's say, the methodology, I wasn't very confident about it. So in finding the practice of research intimidating, I looked at this course as a blessing. I wanted to learn more about the fundamentals of research in a practical and hands-on way, which this course gave me that I hadn't seen before.
I'll go next. As I mentioned, that I teach public health courses for ATSU's College of Graduate Health Studies. So after 9 months of my teaching, I was invited by the research committee, and I did not have any prior research experience. I was just a practicing dentist, and I had practiced for 15 years. I wanted to learn more about research and research in general. Then one day I just saw this email from ATSU's Teaching and Learning Center, which asked us to apply for education research course. I felt the timing was right. I applied for it, and I'm glad I did. I learned a lot, and it was amazing to see how I had that educational research proposal by the end of the course.
So I'm getting ready and preparing for this. I was thinking about what were my thought process, not what was I thinking, but what were my thought processes before I applied for this class. And I had gone to a couple workshops or attended them virtually where they talked about, scholarship of teaching and learning, and this is how, do a survey before your class and do another survey, and then have your students do these different things, and then you can turn that into a paper and you can publish that. And that really seemed, I didn't really quite understand that. And looking back, it seems a little sad and a little kind of funny, but because that's not really what educational research, that's not the whole story. So like Mitzi, I really didn't know what I was getting into either, but I just kind of wanted a better understanding of how maybe I could do research while I was teaching. And I think we're going to get to this, but I kind of landed on a topic that really I'm just so excited and passionate about. So really excited to have gone through the course.
Well, and then turning that, right into kind of another discussion, Dr. Skinner, you mentioned a topic you're really excited about. Can you share a little bit about that project, that idea, and how did you come up with that project idea in the course, and where has it gone?
Yeah, in one of the earlier assignments was to brainstorm, just to put on a discussion board, which I really loved the discussion board. That was really interactive, not only with Quincy, but with our classmates as well. brainstorm 5 ideas of things that might be of interest to you. So I put, or whatever it was, 4 or 5. So I put those up there, and I was interested in each of them. And and the one that I landed on wasn't even probably the top of my list, but it was the question was something about, there's a specific procedure that we teach in audiology. It's called clinical masking, and it's something that's hard for students to learn. So I think and once you've learned it, it's really not that hard, I guess, like most things. But so I think I put something like, why is it so hard to learn? And then Quincy's response to my post, just the things that he wrote, was maybe you want to look at this or find a way to do this. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. And so what it ended up being, I'm looking into doing a cognitive task analysis of that task, and just pulling out all the pieces. When we teach it, we really just teach the students kind of the overall picture, but we don't teach them all what's going on behind the scene in our brains as we do the procedure. And so I really want to pull that out and get that on paper for students to learn that, rather than having to spend 2 years in clinic learning it. They can learn it a little sooner, if that makes sense. But I'm actually pretty excited about it.
That's fascinating. And so throughout the course, you had an opportunity to kind of workshop that idea and really begin to think about how you might implement that. Is that a project that you've carried forward beyond the course?
It is. So I said it's hard for students to learn masking, and we just kind of anecdotally, everybody says that. So my first thought was, well, let me tap into what students have to say. So I did kind of like a little pre-survey, and that actually has been a rich source of information on what's actually going on in their learning process. So I'm actually, with Quincy's help and another collaborator, analyzing the data from that survey, and then I'm going to dig into that cognitive task analysis, just kind of first things. I didn't expect the survey to be as rich as it ended up being. So that's what I'm doing right now. But I told Quincy I'm going to actually just do this cognitive task analysis, because there's other procedures that need it. I'm going to just do it until I either retire or get tired of it. So I'll let somebody else talk.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll open it up to the rest of the panel. Can you share a bit about your research idea and how you came up with it and where it's gone?
Yeah, I'll jump in. It's so great to hear Kimberly's enthusiasm. I was the same way. It was really important for me to pick a project that would help me practice new skills in my job. I didn't want it to be something that was over here. I wanted it to blend with what I was doing kind of on a daily basis. And what we were focusing on was, how do we meaningfully engage with different populations of our faculty? We kind of honed in on the clinical faculty. Those people may be working like those in the dental clinic that can't step away because they're with patients all day. So how can we provide a professional development approach that would be effective and offer a format that they would kind of lean into and that would keep them motivated? So these were some of the questions I was considering. Again, I echo, the discussion board was really helpful because we had an interdisciplinary cohort. So I was fortunate to have a dentist in my cohort. So I was like, well, what do you think about this idea? And, is this realistic? So I could reach different people within the same course. And I found that very valuable. So the thing that I honed in on was putting together a scenario-based interactive self-paced course. Would that be any different than a non-interactive course that didn't use scenarios, that wasn't including more realistic, authentic things that they would see in the clinic? So that's how I kind of came forward with my project, and getting the feedback from my classmates was amazing.
I just say the same things. I felt the course design was very unique because as soon as we entered the course, the week's one question dived us directly into developing our research focus. For example, the question was so well designed that it made me to explore on the challenges that I had in my teaching. And this question was immediately followed by week 2, where we were putting our thought process, we're writing all the steps of conducting research, gathering feedback from each other, and thereby we have now decided and finalized on the topic. So when I say about teaching challenges, so my research project involved promoting self-regulation in graduate level environments. It was a mixed method research design that involve the use of scaffolds such as self-regulation prompts, checklists, and interactive videos across the 10 weeks of public health courses. I learned to use one of the most important skill, which was like the MSLQ. MSLQ is known as like motivated strategies for learning questionnaire. And this scale was used to assess the scaffolds. Basically, this scale was used to assess whether they are like what they are doing with student, with organizing themselves, their metacognitive monitoring, as well as how they are managing the time when they are completing the public health courses. So with regards to update on my project, immediately after completing this course, I went for another course with the TLC, and with the guidance from Dr. Quincy Conley, I decided to continue my education. So currently, as I previously mentioned, I'm pursuing my EDD from ATSU, and I'll be using and building the study for my dissertation.
That's so exciting.
That is pretty. So glad to hear that you're moving forward with that. I definitely needed help coming up with a question, and Dr. Conley was so helpful at that time, because I would say I felt in over my head at that. I've joked many times about this. I didn't even know what the word pedagogy meant, and now I see it everywhere, but it was also new to me. And so that was kind of partly the idea, is taking someone like myself who is new to education and looking at does the Course Design Institute, that class offered by the TLC, does that help take somebody like me into a better educator? And so the TLC and myself are now turning that into a project. So it's pretty awesome and exciting. And just like Preeti mentioned, every week you build on that. And it was just so helpful to have a good foundation and then each week keep adding to it. It wasn't overwhelming.
And if I can just add to that too, each section of our proposals we're going, like when it was time to submit for the Women for ATSU grant, a lot of it was already done because we had been working on it each week. Or if I wanted to submit to AERA or AECT, it was massaging it. It wasn't coming up with something from scratch. So I found that incredibly helpful.
Brittany, those conferences that you mentioned, can you share a little bit about those and the grant, those educational platforms? Tell us a little bit more about those.
Yeah, it kind of goes into the progress of where we're at with mine. I finished the course in December of 2020. And after we finished the proposal, I was collaborating with my SME, my subject matter expert, who is Dr. Satish Kumar, who's the professor at ASDO. Shout out, best SME ever, thank you. So we are creating our content. We're creating this course that we're going to launch out for up to 90 dentists. So in the meantime, I needed funding. I needed to actually buy the licenses. I needed to think through, well, how am I going to motivate my participants to actually take this? Well, maybe I need to go out and get funding. So we started submitting for internal grants because they were advertised and readily available. We have a great sponsored programs department here. So we submitted for two, the ATSU Strategic Research Fund and the Women for ATSU Awards program, which I'd never submitted for a grant before. And Dr. Conley was amazingly helpful in guiding me through that. And we had one of the two funded. So I'll take 50%. Yes, that's a win. AECT and AERA. AERA is the scary conference, I'm being told. You need data to go to that one. So I did not get that one accepted, and we're submitting for AECT this spring. So fingers crossed we get that one accepted.
Thank you. And I want to pivot back. You each really talked about the discussion panel or the discussion board and how really helpful it was to have that collaborative effort with your peers. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about other systems that were in place during the course to support you and provide feedback on your projects.
For me, it was the first time I'd ever taken, this dates me, but for an online course. So, you know, I had to learn how to do the discussion board, and I feel like, oh, I get to see my buddies again today. Hi guys, you know, because it had been a while, but you really did feel like you got to know the people in your class. And I think as far as the, like Preeti had mentioned, every step of the way we had feedback, and you didn't get too off course because you guys at the TLC were so great about providing feedback of, no, that works, but maybe tweak it this way. And just felt like each week we were building on that. So I found it so helpful and very interesting that I feel like I know my classmates from an online course. So that was really cool.
It's really great to hear you were able to build community in that way.
Where didn't we get feedback? I mean, we met weekly, and Dr. Conley was always holding class time for Q&A, and you could literally bring up anything of interest following the topic. So that was really helpful. The discussion board, which we were getting peer feedback from. We had mentors who at the very end would provide us almost fresh eyes for feedback. And then on top of that, Dr. Conley would hold office hours. So if I was like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck, I don't know where to go, I could sign up for a one-on-one with him, and he would say, okay, well, let's look at this a different way. Let's back up. Have you considered this, this, and this? And I think that was what was so intimidating about getting started into research, is it's so personal. You could go a million different directions, but you have to have a good reason. You have to follow the plan, which Dr. Conley showed us.
So I guess some of you mentioned that this was a really great first experience in research. And I think that there's a big concern about starting research. People have an assumption that you have to be a stats expert to even get started. So I'm wondering if you would agree with that statement, or what advice you'd give to folks who this might be their first time engaging in research activities.
I think there are various other factors involved apart. It's not like as I said, that I did not have any prior research experience. So the main motto of this course, we were made aware about that educational research model. Basically, it's a formula that's what I call that clarifies our thought process at every step you are taking in developing that proposal. So I felt the knowledge about this formula was very important. Like, it gave me a direction where I could go back and check in whether if I was on the right path to it. So the main focus, what I mean to say is that the main focus of this course was building that proposal. And after the course, I had come to know that there are like many other biostatisticians at the universities which help you with the data analysis section. So there is much more learning than just being a stats expert.
Okay. And I did have research experience, and I already knew that it's okay to get help with stats. And I am in my last project, actually, I was wrapping up my dissertation when I started here, and I did my own stats, but I also met with Dr. Bay here, and he was a support for that project. So it's okay to get help as well. And there are lots of resources here at the school.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it could be a huge barrier to getting started. Like, oh, I'm going to get started, I'm going to collect all this data, and now what? What do I do with it? And to all of my panelists' point is that if you start with a good plan and you follow through with that plan, there are many, many people who are not only willing to help you, but excited for you to get going and to see you make progress.
So, some of you just mentioned the help from, or the resources available through the biostatisticians. I think we heard about sponsored programs. I'm wondering, what other ATSU resources did you learn about from participating in this course that you didn't know about before?
I had not used the library yet, and how shameful that might be, but now I reach out to them all the time, intra-library loans of certain papers, and I've met with Hal, and it's great, and I had no idea that resource was there, so that's the big one that I came away with.
Apart from just mentioning the resources, I just wanted to mention this point. Dr. Conley welcomed us for the TLC's Journal Club. I think this was a great platform for me, where I learned and heard esteemed researchers all over from the university. So I liked how TLC has worked to continue with such learning opportunities for us, even after we had completed that course. I just wanted to make this point.
Yeah, you mentioned the Journal Club, and I think that's a fantastic resource. Do you want to share a little bit more about the Journal Club and your experience with it?
Yes, of course. So what we do is we just come up with the different problems what we might have in our teaching practices. Like if we want to improve any teaching skills, we just put those journals there. There is like a Excel sheet, and each one talks about them. And there are other people who help with that process. Like there are many, as I said, there are many esteemed researchers who just help us like with any problems. They bring any problems that might apply while in your teaching to increase your teaching skills or your teaching practices. So I felt that I got much solutions to problems that I had, like when I was teaching online public health courses. Apart from that, I could compare myself, like difference between online teaching as well as in-person teaching, what problems they face and what techniques they have used. For example, there are some techniques like team-based learning or flipped classroom learning. I cannot use them exactly the same in my online classes, but I have definitely tried to modify the techniques a little bit, and I have achieved a lot of success because of that. And so this is what I'll say, that journal club is a great way to just take your learning a bit further, where you accumulate different thoughts from different people in the university. You learn so many hints, and that really helps you to make your working here at the university much easier.
I'm so glad you brought up the journal club, because I think for myself, it's for folks who may not have heard about it, it's a monthly meeting, the first Friday of every month. And like Preeti mentioned, people take turns presenting a different journal article. But one of the things I love about it is just hearing everyone's diverse perspectives on the article and pointing out new things. And you mentioned, applying what you were reading about to your teaching or to problems or challenges you were experiencing as well. So I think it's a great way for the educational research community to gather. It's a really dynamic conversation. And a way to meet each other, right? I mean, some of you mentioned the community that grew in each cohort, but that's a continuously growing community here at the university. So I'm so glad that you brought up that, and I see that there's some information put in the chat about joining that research club.
Can I chime in? I don't know if you're ready to go, but I wanted to say a couple things to the next question. Another resource that I learned about was grants. Here, there are people who can help you find grants. And then I found out about a university grant, like just a small grant, which I applied for and I got for my project. So I wasn't aware of those resources. And also I wanted to clarify with the help from Kurt Bay that when he helped me, I had done some analyses, but then his way was better and he actually did those. I didn't want to imply that he did a lot of that work for me. Actually, we would meet and he said, well, we need to run this analysis. This is why we do it. He explained the workings of it, what kinds of situations it was applicable for. And then he actually did that analysis. It's a great support.
Well, congratulations on your award as well. That's really fantastic to hear some of these outcomes of the course. And several of you have touched on the key of collaboration in your projects. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about how you formed those connections or those collaborations, how you fostered them, how do you communicate or really maintain that collaboration through a project?
Well, I get to cheat because Dr. Conley's my boss. So there's that. I think that it depends on what the project is. I'm fortunate to be able to work with Mitzi on her course design institute and trying to figure out what the impact is for faculty that hadn't gone through a CDI before. So there are some people who I went through the course with who I still talk to, or they're working with me. As I mentioned, Dr. Kumar, I could see working with him on another project because he was a joy to work with. So I think those happen organically. I also think there has to be opportunities to find out what you're interested in. If we're both teaching evidence-based medicine and you're noticing a problem and I see the same problem over here, why aren't we talking more? So I think don't be afraid to say, hey, what are you seeing in your class? And maybe I'm seeing something similar. Who cares that I teach dentistry and you teach OT, So I think start there, but also look around, who's around you and what problems are they facing?
So you mentioned teaching, so I'll jump into kind of a different note. In what ways have you applied lessons from the course to other aspects of your work, including teaching or your roles in the clinic?
In pediatric dentistry, I was conditioned to think, well, it's only true if it's evidence-based, and this is what we teach. But I never thought of it as far as education, that, I know what makes a good teacher, but why is that? And so I had to think about it from, okay, now I'm learning what makes a good educator. So it's just interesting that I'd kind of been doing it, but didn't know why. And so now, like this last, when we just gave the lectures to the second year dental students, I'm thinking, okay, I'm thinking more in outcomes. I'm thinking, is this what the methods I'm using, are they evidence-based? And it was just it was interesting to come at it from a different perspective.
I just wanted to answer the previous question. I thought I'm a little bit late on it. So talking about collaborations, this kind of collaboration was not just with the educational research goals. Because we work online, I came to know one other colleague who was taking the course at time, Dr. Josephine Wolf. So I think that we have been like more than colleagues in this process. Like if there is any question, I'll just email her and I'll just ask her, hey, how do I go about it? So it's like being colleagues as well as friends at the same time. And to answer this, the other question, what I have done is I have used some elements of my self-regulation study for my public health students. For example, scaffolds such as checklist or self-regulation prompts. These ideas are very useful in completing online assignments. And I have experienced that such scaffolds have benefited my students, especially those who are like first generation online learners, or students who are like foreign trained professionals, or those students who are just completely new in learning public health concepts. So I believe that my project involves scaffolding, and that really has helped in online learning environments, which provided me with certain solutions and to make my teaching practices better.
I think it's such a great question. And I actually reflected and sat down and wrote down all the skills I think I got to practice going through this and then following the course. And I expected to practice things like, critical thinking and how am I going to recognize my own bias? But there were other things I didn't really think about, like perseverance. And to quote Dr. Conley, research is messy and it's really hard. And it's going to test your patience. And it's going to have you solve problems you didn't even think about. And there are many examples from collecting data that I've only gotten to see microscopically, but oh my goodness, if you can get through it, how much better you feel and how much of a win it feels more than anything else, I would say.
I love that because it, for folks who have gone through it, I think they can absolutely attest it's never a straight line.
No,
right?
The ghost things, oh my gosh, is the participant there or are they not there? I mean, you'd have to know the story, but there are always stories that seem to come out of it, which I think is amazing and funny.
Absolutely.
I think for me, it's helped just because of the kind of things that I'm looking at. It has helped me to prepare better course materials and course lessons. And I'm developing a tool that can be used in teaching, and I'm looking forward to having that tool myself when it's ready. And I think that it'll also help others who are teaching the same thing. But for me personally, yeah, I think that the way I approach my teaching is more thorough, I guess. And also it helps me to understand why sometimes it helps me understand the student struggle a little bit better, which is helpful.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, how did it feel to produce a 5-page research proposal by the end of the course? I mean, in 10 weeks, that's incredible.
Absolutely amazing. Like, couldn't believe that I had a proposal in 10 weeks. I learned like strong foundational skills in developing a study, such as finding the right articles. Dr. Conley gave us like these minute hints For example, I didn't know the words purpose of the study meant so much when we were looking for articles. So I learned to look for these words in finding the articles. And it was amazing to see how these words were frequently used in most of the prestigious educational research journals. And I also learned to choose articles that had like more citations. I learned the value of mixed method study design. I learned to pick the right instruments that were commonly used when you're working on certain concepts of educational research. So, and in that process, I saw some articles like that were like filled with interventions, charts to actual pictures on how the authors had conducted their study. It was as if those journals were walking us through the blueprint of that study. So I think it was amazing to actually see that.
Yeah, I echo what Preeti said. It was very satisfying. And I think sometimes as I look back, I forget how frustrated I might have been during parts of it. But every time that I would get confused or frustrated, you guys from the TLC were so helpful. Quincy was, just amazing and talking me off a cliff a few times. And but at the end, it was really wonderful.
Agreed all the way across. The way that the course is set up is it makes it manageable. So one of the things is if you're not new to research and you're like, is this for me? You're accountable. You're accountable to your class, to your instructor, to come to class with something, to discuss something. And that really got me in gear. The other thing I'll say is that the way my course it fell over Thanksgiving and it went right up to holiday break and we were off. So if I had to invest a lot of time because I was getting myself up to speed. And that lit review week is no joke. Give yourself a lot of runway to do that lit review week. Quincy's laughing, he knows. But it's still good because you learn so much in such a short amount of time. So this course is not for those that want to sit back and just kind of listen. You are doing something every week. And that's the only way I could personally learn.
They can be so helpful. Like you said, this is a great opportunity for anyone who hasn't gone through that process before to have that dedicated time. But like you said, for folks who have that being accountable, having that dedicated reserve time to work on a project, because really, sitting down and writing the research proposals, they really take time. So having that protected time to work on that project can be valuable to really at anyone at any stage of their process. So I have several more questions prepared, but I'm wondering if anyone who's here today has some questions for the panelists or for Dr. Conley. Feel free to put those questions in the chat or feel free to come off mute and ask as well.
I've got a question, kind of leads from what Brittany was just talking about with that lit review and finding the extra time. So first of all, I'm super grateful that you guys offer this course, and I'm really happy to hear and relieved to hear that there are other people that didn't necessarily have formal research training before the class. So my question is, like most people, I'm assuming at least the main concern is just finding the time throughout the week to get this work done amidst the rest of your work responsibilities. So for those that didn't necessarily have research training before the course, and bonus points if you identify as a perfectionist, would you say the 4 to 6 hours per week is roughly what you spent working on homework for the course, or would you say it was a little bit more, a little less? What do you think?
I can say there were some weeks that I definitely spent that much time, and then other weeks that I didn't. That maybe either I was busy and I couldn't give it the time that it deserved, or maybe that assignment didn't need as much time.
I would agree. There were, like, I was joking, but yeah, the lit review week, definitely, you're going to spend a lot of time there. I would also say, though, that it depends. So for me, I had to find my cadence. I actually sat down and wrote out a schedule of everything, where I was going to be from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. And I actually found like a 2-hour time block where I could maybe squeeze it in during that time period where my husband had the kids. So I had to fit it into a very busy schedule. I'm a full-time working mom. I made it work. I also relied, though, on some people to help me do that. So maybe I wasn't cooking dinner if I had a homework assignment coming up. So you kind of have to play with your schedule a bit. I completely understand. And I felt like I needed to read even more because I don't have a PhD. So I'm with you, 4 to 6 hours. It depends on the week, but yeah, that's a good representation of what the course takes.
Thank you.
I think like if we organize the time well, if we have like a timetable for the day, anything is possible. So, and it depends on what kind of a research you want to produce. Like I just wanted to learn everything, like every little minute details from Dr. Conley. So, and I just wanted to give that quality-based research proposal. So for me, it was like around 6 to 10 hours per week.
And to that point, I guess, do the panelists have suggestions for tips for staying on top of some of the material, right? As you're iterating, you were talking about a process. Do you have some tips for kind of ways to stay on track to kind of make that more manageable?
The course is so interesting. We already get the materials, what we have to read, as well as we have a synchronous discussion. So during that synchronous discussion, everyone is like well prepared and everyone is like interactive. So that itself gives you a motivation to complete the assignments, and you are definitely looking from this week to next week. So I think the course is designed in such a way that it is very interesting, and automatically you fall from one step to the next step.
Awesome. Yeah, we had a question in the chat about the participants and what were their roles in the university? Were they all faculty, staff? I'm wondering if you can comment a little bit about the makeup of your cohorts and were there diverse roles, you mentioned interdisciplinary, but can you share a little bit about that?
Trying to think if I had another staff member in with me. I remember Adam Story, and he was PA. I think he was PA. I think I mostly had faculty members in mind. But it's open to faculty and staff. And I think the biggest thing, like me, I'm collaborating right now with different faculty members, and it's helpful that we're all kind of on the same page. And I just think it would be really interesting if somebody went into it with a collaboration. How would that shore up the process? I mean, it was a little daunting to do something on my own. But following that, I flipped it over into collaborations. I'm all about getting a team because it makes it that much better, and you immediately have built-in feedback, if that helps answer the question.
Yeah, awesome. And Dr. Conley, I'm wondering if someone has an existing collaboration currently or is interested in a collaboration that they know they want to get started in the course, how should they submit an application? How would you like that done?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Julie. Laura will be sure to get to you your comment question. Yeah, I would say all options are on the table. Staff, admin, faculty, part-time, full-time have been accepted and been successful in graduating and completing the course, meeting the requirements of the course. We have had a few folks who have had generated a collaboration loosely as a result of the course, where they've maybe investigated things that were related. We have 2 people that completed the course that are not here, that separate dental schools, but had a matching thread related to metacognition, and they collaborated. They did not take the class at the same time, but they kind of have communicated since then. I'm not sure if they're integrating their projects together necessarily, but if you are considering not going it alone, having somebody to join in this endeavor with you, absolutely welcome that. The only consideration would be is the individual assignments would need to be your own work. For instance, if you did a literature review and you're doing the same project, I would expect both of you to contribute a literature review of your own. I get you might both work together in like summarizing the same study. That's okay, but I would say that it would just need to be submitted individually. And then even if it is a joint collaboration one-on-one, same exact project, I think a lot of that's going to happen naturally. Participant A, participant B do their own literature review. You're going to come together. There will be some differences. There'll probably be a lot of differences naturally. And then that will be part of the project where you'll have to blend those two ideas. What makes it to the study? What did this study say that directs the next step in your design of your research? So I would say it shouldn't be an issue at all if you're considering doing that for obvious reasons. You share resources in your department or separate departments. Alternatively, if you're feeling, oh gosh, can I do this? Can I handle this alone? It will impact how you work together strategically, but it will be about the same amount of work.
Thank you. And we kind of touched a little bit on the application, which we didn't really touch based on in the rest of the panel discussion. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about the application process and how long should someone kind of plan to spend working on that with the deadline quickly approaching. That might be a question on people's minds.
I'm sorry, Julie, can you repeat that one more time for me? I'm not sure I got it.
Oh, sure. Sorry. We kind of touched a little bit about the application process, but we didn't really talk about that in depth. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what the application is like to go through as a participant and how much time, might someone want to budget to work on that over this next week?
Good question. And it's been a minute. I would say, though, that I spent a good amount of time really explaining why I wanted to take this course. I didn't have to have my research project really firm. I didn't have to go into it knowing exactly what I was going to do. That's why you take the course, is to kind of figure that out with your colleagues. But it was not one sentence answers. I sat down and really gave it some consideration because I know that this is the competitive course. I wanted to be sure I was going to get in. I didn't know if he was going to rig it for me or not, so I wasn't going to take any chances.
The application asks for general information about your name, your work status, and then it asks you to fill a 250-word summary asking like why you want to do this course. So for that, I think it takes some time to think and to explore what educational course is about, and if it matches with what you believe it is, that summary it is very easy to apply for the thing and get selected for the application, selected for the course.
I think you guys both hit on, you don't have to have a question coming in, and that's key, right? That's something that you guys can explore absolutely in the class. We have some questions, and Dr. Conley, maybe these are things you can address as well. We have some questions in the chat about people who might have a study they would like to revive or redo. Is this something that they could think about in the course? So that's part one. We'll start there.
Absolutely, Dr. Perry. So glad you're here. I'm so excited you took time out of your day to be here. Absolutely. I do believe wholeheartedly that this course is for anyone, any level of research. So perhaps you have something that's just been kind of hanging out there. You kind of know what you're doing, but would benefit from feedback, new ideas, new perspective. More importantly, just protected time to just dedicate to chip away at this study that's been gnawing at you, that you can't, keeping you up at night. Right this way. I think that that's absolutely still within the realm of this course. We're bringing in mentors a little bit earlier on into the course now to provide an ear as well as feedback on your ideas and the direction of those things. And Dr. Perry, as we all know, the research shifts, new literature comes out every day that possibly could be informing what you do or what you don't do. So yeah, absolutely right this way.
Awesome, thank you. And we have another question. Dr. Conley, can you talk about how this class addresses research methods?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way the course is structured, it's split into two halves. You have already heard a little bit about the stress of the literature search. Intro section, this is going to outline the evidence that supports the research approach that you're going to take that's going to inform a research question, right? So that's your introduction. And then the methodology is the second half. The methodology should be based on, one, answering your research question. Two, it should be built on what we already know about the topic. So for instance, if you're taking on, student perceptions of a new intervention, educational intervention in a clinical setting, well, then you might want to replicate or improve what has already been done in that format. So that's why the importance of the literature review. We have to figure out what's already been done. We're going to work heavily on that the first half of the course. And then we talk about the different ways of designing your study to triangulate the answer to that that you come to. Sometimes one thing I try to impart is, to answer a research question, you should try to come at it multiple ways. You should find data that answers that question in multiple ways. Do not rely solely on opinion. And if you have to, then you should figure out multiple ways to get opinion necessary, potentially. So this idea of research methodology, there are some established educational research methodology out there. We bring that in, we talk about it. Dr. Skinner had a very unique and very promising opportunity to get into cognitive task analysis. It's rarely done, but in her case, this wasn't one of the main research methodology for educational research. She adopted it. We connected her with some subject matter experts who do this, who have extensive expertise in this. They shared some resources to get her started. Boom, she had her literature done. So absolutely. As far as, and then we bring in resources from our research support team, our hero and Dr. Kurt Bay, and some other folks too. We've had other people that are here. Deb, I see you. Deb's here, as well as Kelly's here. I believe she was here. We have some folks here that have shed light on this stuff related to methodology, that have expertise and experience in these things. So yeah, I feel real comfortable about coming up with the methodology section in a way that then not only will answer a lot of what you'll do for your proposal, but will last a lifetime, right? These are things that will, I'm going to get good at cognitive task analysis. I know a person, here she is right here on the call.
Awesome, thank you. So with the last couple of minutes, I just want to open up for discussion. If you had to pick one, what would be one big takeaway that you left with from the educational research course?
I would take away that even though I thought I was kind of too old to learn new things, that I can, and it really was inspiring and awesome. And I appreciate all of your help so much. So.
My big takeaway among many was just the importance of doing that research proposal before you start the project. So then you have everything decided ahead of time, potential bugs worked out ahead of time, there's really nothing in the literature about this, maybe I better change directions ahead of time. And then you have that document that you can use, like Brittany said, for applying for grants or for your IRB. When I start presenting this at conferences, I'll have stuff already for my abstract. When I go to write the paper, it's already practically written. So that was a way of doing it that I hadn't done before, but that is the smartest way to do things. So thank you for that.
I think as educators, we are always looking for ways to improve our teaching practices. So when I'm teaching, I'm constantly reminding myself that I have a responsibility, because I'm not only creating future professionals, my students are going to be health leaders someday. So my big takeaway for this course is like teaching effectively, as well as connecting well with my students. And I'll be very thankful for TLC and Dr. Conley for that. Thank you.
You just got a standing ovation there from.
Oh my gosh, how do I follow that? Amazing. No, can I cheat? I have two small ones, promise. First of all, writing for me specifically, I've heard for others, is very, very hard. And it takes a lot of practice and a lot of grace and sitting down and really focusing. And even if it's good, bad, ugly, I'm going to write today because it's practice, and maybe someday in the future it won't feel so hard. So that's number one. Number two, this course was not the one-stop shop to learn everything. This course is the beginning. It's been a year and I'm learning something every single day. And I'm going to keep learning because it's worth it. So I would say, don't come thinking you're going to be an expert. Come knowing you're going to know a lot more than when you started.
Those are all really fantastic. And I'll turn it over to you too, Dr. Conley. Any big takeaways from having taught it? Now, I know, sorry, I put you on the spot there. But a big, do you have a big takeaway you'd love to share about, you've taught it now once or twice, right? So any kind of big takeaways you'd love to share about being the instructor of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a big takeaway. And after I'm done, I'm hoping Josephine, she is also a graduate of the course and is doing some really cool things. I hope you share maybe a takeaway or two after me. For me, this is the big thing. This is the course I wish I had taken when I got my start 10 years ago. I'm not sure how that comes across, but what I'm saying is, this is, as Brittany and so many others have said, this is a great way to start. If you're trying to get a start, it's a new way to refresh your approach to specifically educational research that will last you the rest of your career. This will grow with you. The way the course is structured in the models, as Preeti mentioned, and the homework and the discussion, is all those things together will not only grow with you once you get it down. There's job aids, you come back to them when you need them, right? You come back to them the next study you do when you're thinking about things. But as your skills develop, as your knowledge expands, this tool bucket, this tool belt that you'll get from the course will expand. It will grow with you. That's the intention. So I hope that that's playing out. And so that's what I'm excited about for this course, for those of you considering it. Josephine, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it's so nice to see my classmates. I am so proud of the work that you are all doing. That is so exciting. The one thing that I would share is when I started this course, I was about 6 months into my full-time teaching position. It was such a gift. It was such a gift to build friendships, like Preeti said, to have your thoughts and your insecurities validated, but to also be given the confidence that you can do this. You're going to learn, and we're here to help you. I did come in with prior research experience, and very quickly I learned I can do better. I'm doing some things completely wrong. And this is going to help me be a better instructor and a better researcher. So I absolutely recommend that you take the course. I did not know anything about educational research. I had to Google how to say the word pedagogy several times before the class because I knew I would be asked to comment. Additionally, what I learned, which was maybe not intentional in the course, but I was able to pick up on the way that Quincy because I teach in an online program, how he encouraged the participants to interact and how he motivated participation. So even that I was able to pick up and implement in my course, which was kind of a side. So I was constantly learning the whole time. So that's my takeaway. Thank you for allowing me to comment. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I think that was such a beautiful way to end. So we will stay on if folks have additional questions, but I know we're at the top of the hour and I want to thank our panelists and all of you for joining for today's session. Thank you.
You know,